think that's why it's really important to have the both. You need to have some self-belief or whatever, like self-narcissistic tendencies. But also, I think it's so great to be like, yeah, even literally this summer, even on any scale, life just goes on. People don't care. I actually really enjoy that about our sport. Even people who are pro athletes, who are getting paid, like we're not getting recognized different places. Like it's very much, half the time people don't understand it and think you're kind of stupid.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Thank you to Tracksmith for their support of For the Long Run podcast. Tracksmith is a Boston-based running apparel brand born from a desire to celebrate both the history and the evolving culture of running. Tracksmith recently released their fall collection, which was designed to celebrate the seasonal shifts as we find our rhythm this fall. I have been loving their Van Cortlandt long sleeve, which pairs well with the Alston half tights on a brisk fall day. Imagine a world where running injuries don't exist and every runner stays healthy. That's the world I want to live in, and that's exactly the world that Recover Athletics wants to make happen. Recover is the first prehab app for runners. It instantly generates custom prehab programs made up of strength, plyometric, and mobility exercises to help loosen tight muscles, get stronger, and run your best. Their team designed it with top physicians and marathoners like Met. It's guaranteed to make you a stronger and more injury-proof runner. If you want to fix your aches and pains, get stronger, and set PRs, go to the App Store right now and download the Recover Athletics app today. Welcome back. I am here in Boulder with Kate Grace. Kate, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So the first question is always a tough one, and we'll start there. Who is Kate?
Who is Kate? Kate is a runner. So I'm a middle distance track athlete. I run the 800 and the 1500 this year. I went back to the 800, ran really well in like the Diamond League circuit, set some PRs relatively late in my career, just turned 33 yesterday. So that was kind of exciting to have, and maybe slightly unexpected. And yeah, I'm still out here, still being an athlete, going after different goals. I don't know, now living in Boulder.
Yes. And yesterday was your birthday. And
Yeah.
My apologies for not starting this podcast with the orange freezer candies.
Oh, yeah. I stayed at, obviously, you know this, I stayed at your place because I started training with Team Boss over the last year, but we didn't actually move from Portland until like October. So I feel like I got connected with you through a friend and ended up crashing your pad for like 2 weeks and ate all your orange freezer candies. But I bought you new ones.
They're delicious.
They're so good.
So I've had a couple of your teammates on the podcast, and there's like a different vibe about you guys. And it's really good. And I think it's like what amateur runners should be striving to emulate. At least many amateur runners should be striving to emulate. I've mentioned on this podcast that my first scheduled conversation with Aisha was postponed because Corey ran an 800 meter PR in practice and you guys were out drinking mimosas to celebrate. And she felt so bad. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, of course, don't feel bad about rescheduling. But that's not the like exception to the rule. That's the rule. The rule is, I mean, it's not a rule, but the commonality is fun. And so talk to me about the evolution of coming to Team Boss, and is the environment different than what you've experienced in the past?
Yes. I mean, I completely agree that there is this level of fun, and I fully credit Emma Coburn for like leading the charge in that. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences with different training groups, and I've always had like wonderful experiences, made good friends, blah, blah, blah. But you do see there is this like little X factor with people coming between me, also Emma Bates, coming like mid-career, Corey, I mean, lots of different people, and like having a little bit of a resurgence. And I think again, it's very much Emma setting the example that she is the top of her game, top of the world, and yet realizes that it is fun. Like what we do, it's a gift, whatever, a blessing to be able to do this, to be able to go out and run every day. And yes, it's serious, but like it also is not rocket science. It's not like we're not like doing heart surgeries or anything. And so having fun with it is, first of all, necessary, I think, for longevity. And it's like just, it's good to kind of bring down the seriousness. Like at the end of the day, it's big races, but I don't know, you can laugh about it a little bit. Like we can have some levity. I've always tried to have that in my running, and I feel like I've done a relatively good job of that. But I think when you have someone that is very much pushing that agenda, it just kind of ups the game and makes us make sure that all of us are taking it seriously, but not taking ourselves too seriously, if that makes sense.
I absolutely know what that means. Before I race marathons, I shave a mustache because I'm like, this is supposed to be fun. And so the first time I did it, or the second time I did it, I walked in the bathroom and I forgot that, like, I was out to dinner with friends the night before. I walked in the bathroom, I just laughed at myself. I'm like, this is silly. This is what it's supposed to be. Like, don't take yourself too seriously. I think it's a good reminder. Like, I've definitely gotten into that vicious cycle of like, everything rides on the race. And it's just like toxic. Some people thrive in that environment. I don't think most do.
Yeah. And I mean, I've definitely gone into that. If anything, even this last year a little bit, like as we're getting close to trials. And you're right. Some people thrive on it. I don't think in the long term, almost anybody thrives on it. I do think it's a little bit of a recipe for kind of burnout. It is a funny line though, because if I were also to say like the person in this group that is the most on top of her game, like dotting all the I's, whatever, it's also Emma. Like she's definitely not, it's not saying be lazy or don't do the small things. It's just a slight mental shift in terms of, just like the slight energy with which you are doing things. And I think also the biggest thing that I know I have always struggled with is like work hard, play hard, right? Like when you're focused, but then also be able to turn off. And I think so many runners is like, you realize like that matters so much for recovery, being able to turn off, fully relax, not be so uptight. You're right. Like I think every runner, especially like more amateur runners, people training for marathons, like that is going to get you way further.
There's a lot of evidence to suggest that social interaction post workout is beneficial to better adaptations and better recovery.
Yeah. I'm like nodding my head. I think I read that somewhere. I don't forget where. Maybe
it was Outside
Magazine. Yeah. I feel, I agree. And I definitely, a lot of times like today we had a workout, went to a meal afterwards, like laugh with your friends. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's great. I used to do a group called November Project, and every day after the workout, we'd go out for breakfast. And so it'd be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we just like 30 people would hang out after. And it was like, I didn't think about it in that way at the time, but like I associated a hard workout with like eating an egg burrito and like having a blast afterwards.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to look at November Project as like being, I don't know, jealous, but those types of group workouts seemed like so much fun.
They were, and they are. I'm going to San Diego for the annual summit. There's like a 4.6 mile race around Mission Beach. Very excited to do that.
Nice. That'll be fun.
Yes. So talk to me about what has surprised you most about being in Boulder. Because I have a lot of Boulder athletes on this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to hear the different experiences in a town where there are so many professional athletes.
I was told that you're going to always just feel inadequate running around because everyone you see and know
everyone's
fast. Yeah. I mean, what I really enjoy is it being a small enough town that I see people. And so you like waving at people. I just ran into Sarah Vaughn like twice in the last week. Or
I ran into you the other day.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Out for a run.
So that's something that I think having that feeling of community is great. I'm trying to think what surprised me. I mean,
house prices. Housing prices.
Housing prices has surprised me. Rental market. Yeah. I mean, I think also all of the different, I guess I knew this, but just like there's so many different trails to run on. There's so many different options. I honestly really like it being a college town. Like I like having the university here and having that kind of energy, both with the college students, but mostly with like just, I don't know, a little bit more of, I think sometimes in small towns, you feel like all you can ever do is do your sport. But I think there are other cultural and academic things that can go on here that you could kind of, if you wanted to, get out of your bubble a little bit.
For sure. So switching gears, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Summer of Fast, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about the feelings immediately after the trials.
We were just talking about this the other night. I mean, it was crappy, but I have a kind of a weird thing where I don't fully feel the weight of that kind of like quote unquote failure until a few days later. Honestly, I think the worst part of it is like when you start hearing feedback from other people. It's like when your random people are texting you. Even now, like for my birthday yesterday, I had some people text me that like hadn't talked to me in a while. And they started off with like, oh, I'm sorry, it didn't work out this summer. I was like, thanks.
You didn't follow the rest of it.
Yeah. I'm cool now. Don't worry. But really it is. It's like, I just need to do an auto text or like a do not disturb I'm driving or something like response, like do not disturb I'm in race mode. I actually do love getting texts, but it is interesting the next day. It just like this come down. And so it was way more so that feeling we all flew together to Frankfurt. And then like Emma and Corey and Joe were going on to St. Moritz. And like that was the path that I had wanted to be on. And so that was a very like low moment in which I very much felt like, okay, I am now going the opposite direction. I don't want to be here. Like I've failed and they're leaving me. So that was not fun. Yeah. And
but literally they were, but
Yeah.
mentally they weren't.
Exactly. Totally. And I think what I've also learned is I very much at that moment, like recognized, I think that I'm not at the point yet where I can't feel emotions, right? Like we all want to get to the point where you can just like say, no, I'm not going to be sad.
Yeah.
I'm not that good, but I do usually.
But do you want to be there?
No, probably not. Like it makes you more human or whatever. But like I do feel like I am relatively getting better at recognizing if I'm in a bad place and like kind of asking for help or at least acknowledging it, right? Like I'm self-aware enough to acknowledge and ask for help. So yeah, 100%. At that point, I like told Joe I was pretty low, told my boyfriend, Patrick, told my agent, and they were great. And they like checked in with me all the time. Honestly, it was just like a day or two until I started racing well. It was like, I think from that point, it was like 36 hours until my race. So it wasn't that long. But again, like having the constant check-ins and me, I think asking for help was a big deal for me because sometimes I would have just like gone in shame and been alone, and I didn't.
Is that new for you to be able to ask for help?
I think it's a development. Yeah.
How do you think you got there?
I don't know.
I should have told you this podcast wouldn't be easy.
Yeah. How did I get there? I've always said that. I mean, if people ever ask me about like quote unquote regrets from when I was in college or different things, is that I didn't ask for help more, that I wanted to pretend that I could do it all or whatever. And so I have always spoken, like my words have said I should ask for help. And so I think my actions just took a little while to catch up. And probably at one point, just like getting older, right? And realizing that it's okay. I think that is the great thing about being more confident in yourself is you realize that like, it's okay that you're not perfect at everything and no one thinks you're perfect at everything. And so you don't have to pretend.
Except your parents.
Yeah. No, they know more than anyone.
True. So 36 hours of being in the dumps and then you race. We talked before. I'm less interested in like the times and the splits and the this and the that and more about your mental state. So your first race goes well. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling?
Great. And honestly, I feel like I turned it around even before that race. Kind of once I do think I was lucky that the trials were over. So like it was over. I wasn't getting any feedback. I wasn't getting any like visual Instagram stuff about other people racing. Right. And so I, again, just tried to like enjoy the fact that I was in Europe. I hadn't traveled in so long. COVID had shut everything down. So even going to the race, I think I also recognized that I had been probably a little bit like clenching too tight for trials. Like I don't know if this is the reason that things didn't go badly, but I definitely was like very tense. And so I was like, okay, that clearly didn't work. Let's throw that all out the window. So in a way it was kind of freeing, like again, kind of cliche, but like after a big failure, there's no expectation.
Right. House money.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm big into like retrospection and different versions of yourself, talking to different versions of yourself. So knowing what you know now, what would you have told Kate of the middle of the summer?
Told Kate in the middle when I was already there.
Yeah. But it's not like late October.
Yeah.
So it's like beginning of August.
What would I have told Kate? I honestly think I did a pretty good job of like enjoying myself. And I think I was in a weird way very self-aware that this was unique. again, because I've been a pro for 10 years, I've never had that experience. I think when you're younger, you think if you have this great season, you're like, oh, this is going to happen every year. But it was very clear to me that this isn't the case. And so I think I did a pretty good job of like just enjoying it.
The staying in the moment is really important, and it's like hard to get there. So how was that intentional?
Yeah. In a way, the trial's going poorly because it's so much built up to that. It did feel like it unlocked something. First of all, like there's just less expectation, but then also just like kind of getting your head out of your ass a little bit, like just realizing that whatever I was doing was not working. And so let's switch it up, you know? And I think what I was doing was like trying to be too perfect with my preparation. And I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. So yeah, like I had all these little weird pre-race rituals that I had developed or whatever. And I kind of changed around a lot and I don't know if that's being in the moment, but I think it is. I think that means that you're not holding on to your past
Tied
self.
to it, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, after there was a first little bit of racing, like 4 weeks or 3 weeks or something in Europe, and then I came back and went to Portland. And I definitely had a little bit of a letdown there. I think it's like when you're on a high, it is weird coming down, right? And so I would have told myself probably to be a little like to unplug a little bit more. I think I was like almost manic with how excited I was. And so it took me a little bit to like come down. And then I was kind of getting upset if people like weren't on my level. Not upset, like sad. You know, I was like, oh, yeah, it just feels like a little empty, you know, when you come back off of such a high. It's funny. I had that even after a marathon weekend after Chicago. And I don't know really if there's like a way to fix that. Maybe it's just natural after something goes so well. But I definitely like freaked out about it a little bit. And I would have told myself like not to worry. And yeah.
I think the like delta between the highs and the lows is what makes it so fun, right? Like I've had so many races go so poorly and a few go so well. And the ones that go well, you think about the ones that go poorly and it's like, yes, I finally got what I've been saving up for, training for, dreaming of.
Yeah. No, you're right. But have you ever had it like it's been more of this? I never had the like Olympic letdown, quote unquote, for Rio. But this year I definitely had a little bit, even after the good ones, like after Zurich. Yeah, it was like also a weird letdown because you just know it was like, you know, that like that you won't get that again or that you're not promised to get that again or something. I don't know.
So I find that self-awareness to be so powerful. So I wanted to drop out of Boston because it wasn't my day and I was having stomach problems. It started at like mile 12 and I've had like a pretty bad day at Boston before. It started at 7. So I was glad it didn't. But I said to myself in Wellesley, so mile 14, I guess is 13 was where I was having this conversation. Like, you don't know when you'll be back here. You love this. Get to Newton.
Yeah.
And so I think that like you don't know when you'll have this again gives so much power and like gravity and force to that moment.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. You're right. I think it's so powerful to kind of realize that. It's a weird line because then it can add stress also. You know, you want to like not make it unnecessarily, not put unnecessary stress on yourself. That said, I think it's also a good skill to learn to perform under some pressure. Right. You know, I think it's just funny. I mean, it's even more so with marathons. Like I was just watching Chicago and it was such a high watching Bates like do so well. And literally it was like I was depressed like the day after, you know, it was so weird, but I think it's because it's like the brain's not meant to be.
That's stimulated. Yeah. Behind the scenes question. Is she going to post 26 and a quarter Instagram recap post?
I don't think so. Just because I think she posted today toward the end of her race. But that was fun. It's funny. My dad was even texting me that he was really into it. I think especially because like with a marathon, you can't fit everything into one post. So it was kind of nice. I don't know, going along the journey with her.
It's a fun way to experience it.
Yeah.
What are you most proud of from this summer? Actually, what are you most proud of? Period. Whew. It's too easy to ask about the summer. And you don't want to talk about the summer anymore.
Summer's dead. No. Most proud of period is something to do with my relationships. Honestly, like I feel like with my sister or with different friends that I try to be like a loyal person that's there for people. And I feel like, especially when I was younger, maybe everyone is just more self-involved and like a little bit flakier. And I still definitely have those times, but yeah. So I think I'm most proud of the people that I love and that love me. And then I feel like I've built strong relationships. So that's not running related, but running, it's always about like comebacks and coming through adversity. I don't know.
Cool. Which one of those people got you into running?
Sarah Lesko, which I just posted about like the other day, who is a woman who went to Yale also and was involved with Oiselle. So she was like an alum when I was a senior, and I met her at like an alum function. And she told me she kind of came up to me and said, you have to keep running. And that was just the start of a very long, like great relationship, mentorship, whatever, in which I feel like she was kind of helped me grow up. And so has been like a very strong figure in my life. Also my high school coach, although I don't talk to him that much, but I don't know. It's funny to me now on the other end, like getting to the age where I'm thinking about, or even coaching youth when I was at Bowerman, and just realizing like, it's funny on this end where you don't think it matters that much if you have a conversation or you show interest in someone. But on the other end, like those relationships still affect me like years later. I talked to my high school coach occasionally, but he hasn't like coached me in however many years. And it still like gives me confidence, you know? So it is cool. Coaches are cool.
What would you say to your first coach?
My first track coach or first coach ever?
First coach ever.
First coach ever was soccer.
Look, I'm still going.
My first coach ever was soccer. And
okay, let's go running coach.
Okay, we'll go running coach. I mean,
the reason I ask is I think that there are a lot of coaches that listen to this podcast. And so I think you're not just talking to your coach, but you're talking to them as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I almost like would start crying thinking about it. But like, he did everything right. I think he basically instilled in us like a joy and love of running. It was so fun. He also held us accountable and he made me believe in myself. And I don't know, like that's literally priceless. It's crazy. So
what do you think it takes to believe in yourself? How do you get there?
I don't know. I feel like at the retreat, we were talking about this, like, are all athletes inevitably narcissists? That at one point, the theory of being an athlete is that you are the best, like you believe you're the best. So maybe it's just a narcissistic personality trait.
Maybe. We'll have to consult Jake.
Yeah, exactly.
He says hello, by the way.
Hi, Jake.
Hi, Jake. Jake from State Farm.
Yeah, so maybe I'm just narcissistic. I don't know. What it takes to believe in yourself. Again, I think there's different ways to go about it, obviously, but I do think that feeling secure in your identity, feeling secure in relationships, I very much have felt like with my family and even coaches and friends that like there is a love and support regardless of how you do, right? And then the performance comes out of the excitement, not the fear. And I've always done any kind of athletics. It's always come out of like an excitement and a fun. And I think in a lot of ways you kind of mirror the adults in the room when you're younger. Yeah. And kind of learn that it's okay to want something really badly, but it's not because that you're scared that they're going to be mad at you or something.
Right. So you talked about excitement and joy and fun. What's exciting or keeping you engaged? You've alluded to like you've been doing this for a decade. Mm-hmm. The whole goal of this podcast is understanding the why and like what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated, or short, fast, and motivated in your case. So I'm curious for you, why are you still doing it?
I'm still doing it because I think I can improve. But asterisks, I think there's always something to work on, right? And I really, really enjoy that process, like truly to my core. And in a way, I think for a bit, like moving around so much, I've had 4 or 5 different coaches since college, kind of helped just have novelty, which did help like get me through. Obviously also the coaching helped, but like it doesn't feel like 10-year block because it really has been so broken up, you know? Also, just even for me within an elite setting, like different distances, I've gone back and forth between the 8 and the 1500, and it's fun to have new challenges, you know? And so I think that again, with runners of all different abilities, like it can be a fun thing to try a different race distance, right? And just like see what it's like. And there's a whole new thing with race tactics and training. But yeah, I think at the core of it, it's that I feel like I can keep improving and I really enjoy that. And I think even now, like fall training has started and it's like the most fun for me when I get to just try to see if I can do a little bit better than last year. In general, I am kind of bad where I want to do everything different. And so I do really appreciate Joe as a coach, like that he kind of holds you to just like 1 or 2 things that you're trying to work on, not everything. But
cool. Fast forward 5 years, what are you really proud of?
Whew.
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Fast forward 5 years. Something about like staying true to myself. I think a lot of what's happened in this last year that you've seen is me again going down in distance. It's very uncommon for an athlete when they're in their 30s, especially to like go down in distance and to do well. And I think that was very much like me trusting myself and my instincts that I could still be really good at this distance. But I think on a larger scale, even when you think about eventually transitioning from running, what that timing might look like, just what's happening in the world or in my life next, that I don't go based on what I think I quote unquote should be doing, because I still get pulled into that all the time. And I think it's very clear that like you're happiest and probably also most successful when you're doing like what you believe is best, not necessarily what you think like society's telling you, because also like no one really cares what you're doing.
Which doesn't really help the narcissism, right?
Yeah. In that case, I think narcissism is kind of good.
Well, it's all what matters.
I mean, maybe like get advice from people that you care about or something. I don't know.
So I've told this story before on the podcast where after I ran rim to rim to rim, I was really hungry and I wanted to eat a picky bar.
Mhm.
And the reason I say a picky bar is because anyone who's eaten a picky bar knows how crinkly and noisy the wrapper
Mhm.
is. So I started eating this picky bar on the bus after I had run for 13 hours. And the bus driver says, no eating on the bus. I said, ma'am, I just like ran 42 miles. I'm like quite hungry. And she goes, I don't care. No eating on the bus. And in that moment, I realized that nobody cares. It's just running.
That's so good. Yeah, exactly that. I'm trying to think.
And that was like the pinnacle of like my athletic career. And nobody cares.
No one cares. Yeah. But again, I think that's why it's really important to have the both. You need to have some self-belief or whatever, like self-narcissistic tendencies. But also, I think it's so great to be like, yeah, even literally this summer, even on any scale, life just goes on.
Right.
Like people don't care. I actually really enjoyed that about our sport, is that even people who are pro athletes who are getting paid, like we're not getting recognized different places. Like it's very much half the time people don't understand it and think you're kind of stupid. So I don't know, or not stupid, but I think that like you're not, that it's a hobby or something, which is also kind of is. So
well, in Boulder, they're desensitized to it because it's everywhere.
Exactly. I think also in 5 years, I mean, more and more, I really enjoy like working with younger athletes. And so I think in some way having a little bit more, in some way giving back both to the sport of running and also just like to younger athletes in general.
Cool. Thank you again to Tracksmith for their support of the podcast. I've been a fan of Tracksmith and their community-first efforts ever since my early days of running in Boston. As my miles increase again ahead of some big goals this coming spring, I'm definitely doing it in comfort and style with their gear. I'm also proud to partner with Tracksmith because they're going to donate 5% of your order value to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for all orders, and you'll also get free shipping. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is dedicated to finding a cure and helping those living with Parkinson's. Both of my grandfathers have or had Parkinson's, and I'm grateful of Tracksmith's support for something so personal. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders that start from that page will contribute towards this donation. Recover Athletics is a supporter of not only this podcast, but also my own running. It was built in Boston by two lifelong training partners who got tired of aches and pains getting in the way of their training. In 90 seconds, their app will customize a program for your body and your training. I've plugged in some of my more common aches and pains, and I got a custom-built program designed to strengthen the muscles and tendons that will help avoid these issues going forward. Your first custom prehab program is free, and they have an unlimited free trial. You can get it on the App Store right now by searching Recover Athletics or click the link in the show notes. If you like it and want to upgrade, their premium subscription costs less than one trip to a PT. Give Recover a try today. Your legs will thank you. I'm gonna ask a question that I normally ask at the beginning, but we're asking now. Do you remember your first run? First run, period. Not like first run on the track team or in college.
First run, period. I have a picture of a 5K with my mom, like a Thanksgiving turkey trot when I was probably 5. So
Did you win?
I must have run that. I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, honestly, me thinking is like playing tag with my friends. And I was always really freaking good at tag. And I loved it. So yeah, honestly, like that's my memory of running is playing.
Fun and joy.
Yeah. And playing soccer and running down people. Those are my first memories. And then probably like at one point, I think I was told to do a run for soccer and I would like I would live near the beach. I'd run to the beach and back. But
And at what point did you realize you're kind of good at this?
in high school, just I think my freshman year of high school, I went on for the track team and was like pretty good based on really little training.
What did that feel like?
It feels good to be good at something, you know? It feels good to, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like being special. I don't know, which is weird to say, but like that is what it is. Honestly, for a while, for a while, I didn't know if I should keep running because I didn't know if I only liked it because it was like this positive feedback loop of something that I was good at, you know?
When did you realize it was something like worth sticking with?
It was a slow progression of realizations that honestly didn't happen until I was like a pro. I mean, it was kind of stepwise. Like toward the end of high school, you realize you can go to college. Toward the end of college, I made the time for the Olympic trials. I made the standard. So I was like, okay, I can train for the trials in like a few months. After the trials, I was like, oh, actually, probably if I actually train for this, I could be better next year, you know? So it was more like that. I never in my, like even 2 years ago or whatever, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have said, oh, I'm going to still be going at this point. It's just you get there and you're like, oh, actually, I still want to be doing this. And again, I still think I can be being better. Has been a trend. I do think that it's been interesting getting older. And I always just assumed at this point in my life, it's funny when you're young, you just think that like you turn 30 and you're old and that you like aren't going to want to have fun anymore and you're going to like want to be serious. Well,
I never want to be serious.
I know, right? It is interesting. I was thinking about this yesterday. Like I love growing up. I think it's a privilege to be able to have responsibilities and like give back or whatever, but also like never have to say goodbye to like quote unquote inner kid. Right. And I love that. And it's been so fun to discover that. And I think
that's the secret.
Yeah, it is. It really is actually. And I think being able to have both of that, because I think if you just have the inner kid, then you get into like kind of irresponsible or whatever. Like I do believe that I want to be given more like responsibility and have to like hold the weight of whatever, like being a good citizen and family member. But it doesn't mean that you have to like say goodbye to like the wonder of life.
When I moved to Boulder, I had, I don't know, no less than 20 people tell me like, never let this get old. And I'm just like out frolicking in slot canyons and gorgeous sunrises, and it's just like you feel like a kid in this, like the world is our playground. And I don't know if it's like unique to this place. It's possible anywhere, I think, but like this place makes it pretty damn easy. But I think that so much of it is this like the joy that you bring to it. And I had a conversation with Megan Roche, who is a scientist, and she said like she was commenting on my recovery and like the fact that I was like progressing faster than you would expect. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I think there's something to this like joy and this fun that you're having. And like you do the work in other places and then running is just like this pure expression of fun. Yeah. And it sounds like woo woo, but it's like, it makes sense. You get it. It makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. 100%. And as you said, I do think that there is research there with whatever hormones are being released or less cortisol or something. Right. So I'm sure they will continue to prove why, but I think
in the meantime, we'll just keep having fun.
And I know, and it is Boulder. Boulder's great, but I've gotten this everywhere, like just going for a run and yeah, literally just like spontaneously laughing in the middle, you know, because there's something's really pretty or there's like a sunrise or you get downpoured. Chicago was the opposite. Like I literally went out to do a little shakeout and it was like a deluge of water that I've never experienced. It was insane. But all I could do was I was just like giggling. And I think just having that sense of just like laughing in the world, moving your body, I don't know. It's great.
I love it. People always ask me because I like to run in like crazy weather. Yeah. And like I'll run in a ski mask when it's snowing a lot. And people are like, wow, that's so crazy. You're so like intense. I'm like, it's fucking fun. Like, to get to run down the middle of the street when there are no cars in the road.
Yeah.
And it's like the city is your playground. And yeah, you can just laugh about like how ridiculous what you're doing is. It's great.
Totally. That should be a new running club or something. Like only run on the extreme days.
Yeah, I mean, hard to be consistent with that.
Yeah, true. Maybe that's let's not do that.
Pivoting back to the hard questions, what are you afraid of?
I've always been afraid of losing my memory. I don't know, like losing my mind. Like, so growing older, but it's not even, obviously everyone like is scared of dying, but I think something about like not being able to recognize people or not being able to be my same self. I
Yeah.
don't know. So I don't know what that says about me.
You're a people person. You like being with people and having
And
sharing
I love
memories.
learning and I love like knowing things. And I think it does scare me, the idea that could not always be there, you know?
Does that help ground you or does it help keep you grateful?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think having an awareness of the fragility of life is helpful. I mean, definitely, I think maybe more than other people, but very much like am someone who believes that it is valuable to like contemplate death. I don't know. And I think I got into a little thing where I was reading a lot of books about this, but yeah, I do think that like our society, modern society has very much like put that into, we don't talk about it, we don't think about it. And I think it does a disservice to people who are grieving. I think it does a disservice to the rest of us because we think we're going to live forever and we take it for granted.
Is gratitude an intentional part of your life?
Yes, and more and less so at different points. This year, starting out, I feel like every year it's like my thing at New Year's, and I try to start a gratitude journal. But honestly, it was great. Like I did start a gratitude journal, which then just morphed into like a general journal, which was kind of fun. I've never really kept one, and I have one from this year, like January through September, and it's really fun looking back at it. It's like just because so much changed, and I was doing this big risk of moving here. I do think that kept me in the moment a little bit. And then separately, the gratitude thing, I think it's powerful just to remember that, like, to force yourself, not even just for the big things, but like the small stuff, like, I don't know, how good an apple tastes or whatever, you know?
Orange chocolate freezer candy.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, I think that, to your point, I think that it's important to like recognize the big things, but a daily gratitude practice forces you to like get that out of the way and then like dig into the day to day. So before we started recording, I talked about how I'm putting a sauna in the backyard here, and I've not been in a sauna in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I love it so much, yeah, there's the like health and performance benefits, but it's like you can't do anything in a sauna besides think. And there are very few places in the world that that's the case. And so I was doing it like 3 or 4 times a week through 2019. And I learned from Amelia Boone about like the daily gratitude practice and Caroline Burkle as well, fellow Olympian. And both of them talked about like, pick the small things, like the great conversation you had with that person in line or whatever. And I think these things are so powerful to just like either reflect on the day past or think about what you're grateful for. And this world is moving so quickly. Like, who has time to sit down and think for 20 minutes?
I know, it's so true. Although really, like, there is time, we just distract ourselves.
Yes, true.
That is one thing I did not do a great job of this year. I was trying to be more intentional about sharing myself, whatever, like sharing the journey when I was in Europe. But usually what I really like when I go travel internationally, if I get a data plan that's like not all inclusive, it does force me off my data when I'm out in the world, and actually does force me to kind of be more like in the moment present. This year I didn't do that though, so I was on my phone like all the time.
Unlimited data.
But I mean, sometimes like on a plane, for example, times like that, yeah, where you're kind of forced into it, can be weird, like reminders that that's something that's very possible to do at all times.
That's true. Also camping and just like random crevices in Boulder County where there's no cell coverage.
Yeah. That's the one thing with, actually, back to your question about what surprised you most about Boulder is that there's no freaking cell coverage anywhere.
It's pretty terrible.
Crazy.
It's really common to just like have a text thread going with someone and like their text come back green like 6 hours later because they're out of service.
Yeah. Even like in the middle of town.
Right.
Well, not that bad, but for me, I'll just be going somewhere and suddenly I can't Google things for 3 minutes.
You got to ask somebody a question.
Ask somebody.
So my uncle was here over the weekend and he's an Orthodox Jew. And so he doesn't use his phone, between Friday night and Saturday night. And so he went to services at a temple that was a mile and a half away, and he printed out directions.
Wow.
And then he got lost. So he had to actually ask somebody for directions. So like this still happens. But it's such an, like with like the world at your fingertips, it's so interesting to like have it taken away, even if it's 24 hours.
Yeah. I've always wanted to do something like that. I mean, I guess just for personal kind of, I don't know, trying to personal wellness, trying to do a no tech Sunday or no tech something, but I never really followed through with it.
There's still time.
Yeah.
Speaking of tech, your journey with social media, at least from an observational standpoint, has been an interesting one. I feel like early on in your career, you were very, very active with Wazelle and social, and then sort of ebbed and flowed. And it seems pretty open now as well. Talk to me about your use of social media and sort of like inviting people along for the ride.
I think in some senses I'm just a sheep. I don't know. I follow. I follow what people.
Quote of the day.
I follow what people around me are doing. So when I was with Wazelle, I was kind of, they were all on social all the time, and then here everyone's on social all the time. So that's why I'm doing it. There's not much more than that. But if we're going to do a little bit deeper, I do think that it is a weird thing. Like, I think for a bit I was making so many different moves and changing sponsors and just like things that I believed were great decisions for me. And like, there was a lot of backstory that I just didn't want to or didn't feel comfortable sharing. And so it was this strange thing where, I don't know, it's strange when you're like in the thick of it that no one's ever going to fully understand the reasons you're doing stuff.
Right.
And you kind of like, it's not fun being misunderstood, you know? And I also don't want to like fully be an open book. So yeah, that probably was a little bit of where for a bit there, I was just like, I don't feel the need to share everything right now. And I do think coming back to it, I'm still at that point. Like I still very much only share like running related stuff, but I do think again, like mimicking people or seeing people in the current group, their use of it, and they're not overthinking. They're not like,
I mean, it's not like manicured. It's not like, it's not very thought out in like, it's perfect all the time. It's like, this is what you're doing. This is
exactly. And I think in a way I have learned from them and are kind of emulating what they're doing. I think I have a different personality. So I'm like not the same on my social feeds as like Corey or Emma or Aisha are. But I think the general thought behind it of just like putting it out there and having it be part of your day and like, just like kind of people can take it as it is. And in a way, like not for them, like you have to explain everything, but it doesn't matter that it's just like, it's more just kind of part of a conversation or something.
But in the fact that it does matter, do you think about the impact that it has?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I hope that in my use of social media, I'm not putting off like a perfect, I mean, I definitely am not putting off like a perfect persona. And so I'm not like kind of too much playing into this like negative spiral that people get into. I do think I tend to do the like vulnerable post enough that people can whatever hear the backstory.
She's an actual human.
Yeah. I mean, those posts kind of annoy me because they're also a little bit clickbaity, you know, and you just know if you're going to like put something vulnerable out there that everyone's going to love it. Right. I don't know. But that all said, I think it is good to share like ups and downs a little bit. Some kind of behind the scenes. Also just like to share the lighthearted nature. Yeah. In that sense, I hope it's a positive. Definitely like with running, there's always like the body image stuff. And I very much am aware that like now as an older runner, like my body is definitely different than it was when I was in college. And I think there's always the risk that like kids who are in high school or in college or even right out of school look at someone who's like 32, 33 and think that we are the same, but we are not, you know? And I know that I went through issues where I like looked up to older runners and thought I had to diet a ton to get to that point. So hopefully I'm not playing into that. I don't know exactly how to like work against it aside from just like being open and clearly like being a generally healthy person and not like being obsessive, but I don't know.
So the reason I asked that question is because I feel like you guys are doing a better job than most when it comes to. So no, it wasn't like, oh, you're doing damage. It was like your group as a whole is setting like being role models in a way that is a sustainable way that like most runners should behave, in my opinion. Fun, food, and social, and training hard, and doing the recovery stuff. It's like it's doing all of it. It's not just like I'm running and then there's nothing else that happens.
Yeah.
And we talked about how like that works for some, but you said it's not sustainable. So I think that even like for someone like myself, it's like the permission to do more than just run and like, yeah, go out and have the beer or like eat the pizza or like whatever, because it's life. And spoiler alert, we all die at some point. And so I think that the people that are seeing it and your collective reach is massive. And so all these people are seeing what it's like to be a real human who also happens to run versus a runner. And there's nothing else to it. I think that, I mean, the University of, I forget which school it was that came out today about the DEXA scans to go to races. And it's like, there's so much crap out there that like we have to fight against. And so showing the complete other side of like what sustainability and what long-term health and joy and fulfillment looks like we need more of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I hope so. I mean, again, I think for that, it really is showing what I think is working and what we are doing. It's not necessarily, I like to hear that there's like a benefit outside, but you're right. I think it's mostly just showing what's actually happening. And I think it is true. Like at one point, like you happy people make happy runners or something, that everything is better when you are just like enjoying yourself. And it also like, that's how you're going to perform your best.
Right.
Yeah. So I will continue to use social in that way. I also think in a way, I think it's kind of evolved just in general, the trends right now, like from when Instagram was first coming and you had to be perfect all the time and everything was like the beautiful photo.
Right.
Now it's much more just kind of
real,
which is nice.
Getting there at least.
Yeah. Well, then there's the filters, which are just insane. So that was another whole like realization this summer that the filters are wild. So I don't know. That's, I still am amazed, like kids growing up, living so much life on your phone and seeing that. But I don't know. People are resilient. Everyone's going to turn out okay.
People are resilient. That's going to be the title of this podcast. Yeah. Kate, thanks so much for taking some time to chat, and we'll see you out there.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf.